You said something else that I think was inspired by Holy Spirit. Well, to find balance in how we relate to our God
Yeah.
and our family, to find that balance. And I think that if you are in relationship with God and you understand what that means, the balance comes out of that.
Right. Yeah.
Would you agree with
I
that?
agree with that.
Yeah.
I certainly agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, when people go on these journeys to find themselves,
You ever
I
been
believe-
on one?
I have, and it wasn't like my goal was to find myself, but I did decide like I wanted to go and be in a space that was away from family, away from home, away from everything, and I went out to Arizona with a friend of mine.
Oh, nice.
And we went out to Sedona, and my friend Kyle Fisher, we've been friends since like the 4th grade, and 3rd grade actually. And we went out into the mountains, until I can't remember the name of the mountains, but
Yeah.
we were driving into town in Sedona where there's no light pollution. And so when you get out in the mountains,
Yeah.
we got little lights on our foreheads strapped, and I'm walking around like,
I'm going to fall off something.
I'm like, listen, man, I'm not into this kind of stuff. Like, but when we got out there, when we got out there, he kind of was like, you feel good about this spot? And I was like, yeah. He was like, all right, well, I'm going to head on and, head a little further out. If you need anything, just yell. I'll be able to hear you. And I was like, all right. And I turned my light off, and then the lights adjusted, or the lack of light adjusted, and the only light was the stars.
Oh, jeez.
And I remember in that moment feeling like, this is the moment where God is going to give me the revelation of my life. I'm like, let me just lay here, be quiet, And I was searching for a response, and I didn't hear anything verbally. But ultimately, what I recognized from that trip, and what I gained was that me looking for God was really me finding and looking for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So when people go search for themselves, I think that's an opportunity for them to find God.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And you want to know why?
Yeah, I do. Tell me why.
Because he lives in you.
Yeah, exactly.
He inhabits us. And we become one with him. So when we discover ourselves, we discover God.
Yeah.
Because he's there.
Yep. So that was like a opportunity for clarity in a way where, phone didn't have no service. Couldn't even use the flashlight on the phone. It's like this is a pointless piece of technology.
Yep. Well, that's probably true all the time.
Right. One of many lessons from that trip, but I say that to say I think when people go and they go and find themselves, they find God, and what they recognize when they get back from that experience and when they apply that to their everyday life, is that at any point you've got to be able to sit with yourself so that you can have a conversation with God.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are distracted, you are not with self.
Nope. That alleviates the problem of when I hear something, is it me or is it God?
Yeah.
It's both.
Right.
It is both.
Right. Yeah.
So when you're in touch with who you are and who is in you, then, sometimes you make mistakes that goes through filters but we can be confident that when we ask the question, is that me or is that God? The answer is yes. Mm-hmm. It's a great story.
Yeah, man.
I gotta quit saying
No, you don't. No, you don't. You can say,
Do you think our distractions are caused by our own decisions or the enemy or just life? And you kind of touched on that actually, but
yeah, I mean, you know, all of those things are kind of intertwined. I mean, the enemy, decisions, and life. To pinpoint it to just, be one kind of seems like it discounts the, it discounts the responsibility from the other things. Like if I just say it's just the enemy, then, my decisions that I make, I can't be mindful and be focused and say what my decisions are rooted in or based on if I'm not contributing some of that to the lifestyle I live, the people I surround myself with, the culture that I represent or that I'm a part of. So, to just say which one thing I think is hard, but I think ultimately, we have the capacity at any point, if we recognize this, we have the capacity at any point to focus, to bring focus. And I went to thinking about looking up that word focus, and I realized the way we think about focus, we think about it in a mental state more than we just think about like something coming clearer into vision. We think about it more mentally than we think about it just practically with an activity, like with the action of making something go from blurry to clear.
yeah.
It's clarifying. Focus is really clarifying. And so when we think about it that way, instead of thinking, man, I just need to be better at focusing, I just don't know how to focus. I just can't focus.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you can.
Yeah, you can.
Like, what's that on the wall? Is that a spider? Oh, that's a spider. You can focus real quick. You focus.
Yep.
Some things can bring our senses into focus like that.
Yep.
And so, I think if we think about whether or not we are utilizing that capacity within us enough has to do with a lot of different things. And for some of us, our lives have been rooted in chaos. For some of us, it's been difficult to find a moment outside of a thought process that involves chaos, that involves insecurity or uncertainty. I mean, just lack of so many things that cause our root, spatial awareness to be completely distracted at all times. And
See, that becomes normal. When that becomes normal, then you resist the idea of not living in chaos.
right. Because it's hard to imagine what life feels like without it.
Yeah,
And that's tough, like
it is tough.
and I don't remember which Batman movie it was, but Bane is like, you merely adopted the dark. I was born in it,
Wow.
He's like, from the time I was born, it's been chaos.
Yeah.
So I think about my kids a lot, and I as they make decisions, the first thing I try to do is say, all right, when I was 7 years old, what was my thought process in that moment? What did what caused me to do the things I did? And then I go back even further, and then sometimes I think, when did my conscious arrive? Like, what are my first memories? And it's like, I feel like we all have a moment in our young childhood. Somebody that studies this could probably do a better job of explaining this, but it feels to
They're
me
not
like
listening to this program. So go for it.
I pray they will.
Yeah, I do too.
But I'm thinking like every one of us comes into awareness at a certain time, and what we come into awareness to sets the norm. It sets in motion what we consider to be normal. And everybody's normal, like I don't think any two people's normal is exactly the same.
I don't think they should be.
Right. Can't be.
Can't be.
So let's consider that.
Yeah.
Let's consider that. And so when we as individuals do the work of trying to help, lead others to this awareness that we find, a lot of times if we're not willing to, exhibit some of the fruits of the Spirit in that means of communicating or connecting with people, we completely miss an opportunity if we're not looking at it through the lens of kindness, from the perspective of someone who says, all right, so when I arrived and came into my understanding of the norm, my norm was this particular thing. Rick's norm was probably that particular
Way
thing.
back there.
It's probably a little different. It's a few minor things.
Few minor things.
Different probably.
Yeah.
And so like may we just like find opportunities to consider consider this idea that we have no idea where somebody's original idea of norm came from.
Right.
We've got to address that first before we begin to answer the questions like, why won't people just listen?
Yeah.
Why don't people just understand?
You just nailed it. We're not listening. And in order to understand someone's difference,
Yeah.
someone else's normal, we have to be willing to shut up and listen and quit trying to convince.
Right. Sure.
Yep. Wow, that was great.
Yeah.
That was great stuff.